Hey YouTube, Joyboy here. So, today I want to talk about Big Mom and seek some kind of understanding about her current circumstances and what might happen to her in the future. So guys, it's been a very long time since we asked this question, since we sought some kind of understanding about this aspect of Big Mom. But if you guys remember, Big Mom cannot sustain damage. The reason behind Capone's intricately laid plan during the Tea Party was because he knew of only one circumstance in which Big Mom had suffered as much as a scratch, and that was because the portrait of Mother Carmel was knocked over. And even as they attempted to assassinate Big Mom, Brook managed to shatter the portrait of Mother Carmel, and Oda again confirmed to us that while in this state, Big Mom could again suffer some kind of damage. He showed us her knee. And so I think that we should all agree, I hope that we should all agree, that at some point in time this information should come up again. There is a reason why Oda included this in the story. Whether or not you believe that Luffy will be the one to defeat Big Mom, whether it be in Whole Cake Island or later, there's only one circumstance with all the damage Big Mom has suffered in which she's ever had a scratch. And this is the most awkward circumstance ever. It has nothing to do with actually inflicting any damage upon her, it has to do with this portrait. It's just strange. And so we're in the same situation that we were in 30 to 35 chapters ago. How is it possible for Big Mom to sustain damage, and what does this have to do with the portrait? Now guys, I want it known that there are many ideas out there, some crazier than the next. If you guys remember all the way back to, I think it's about a year ago now, when we were talking about the portrait of Dorian Gray, there's some possibility that Oda took inspiration from the story of the portrait of Dorian Gray and applied it to One Piece and applied it to Big Mom. Essentially, the idea was that Big Mom's life force was in part or in full stored within this portrait, so by breaking this, you released this sort of spell, I guess. But it's unlikely that this is the case because the portrait is still smashed into bits and Big Mom is yet again not taking any damage. And so I didn't just bring this up to waste your time. I think that thinking about it from this perspective offers new insight as to how this potentially works, allows us to draw a conclusion. The portrait breaking itself had nothing to do with Big Mom being capable of taking any damage. Otherwise, she would still be susceptible to damage right now. So these two things are just correlated. It is not causation. The portrait does not break, which causes Big Mom to be able to take damage. Right, what is going on here is that the portrait is breaking, which causes something different to occur to Big Mom, unrelated to the portrait itself, which makes her susceptible to damage. And so what else do we have to go on? Well, the only other thing that could possibly relate to Big Mom being susceptible or not to damage is her actual state of mind. We saw immediately after the portrait was smashed into pieces, Big Mom started freaking out. Big Mom started crying, she became delusional. She essentially lost her mind with grief. Guys, this is all that we have to go on at this moment. So basically, the conclusion that we have to come to is that Big Mom's invulnerability is in some way related to her emotions. It doesn't just have to be sadness, it doesn't just have to be grief, but something about her state of mind makes her both impervious to damage and vulnerable. Honestly guys, compared to where we were about a year ago, this is incredibly fortunate for anybody who is attempting to possibly defeat Big Mom. Before we were thinking that, okay, the only time she's ever sustained damage is when the portrait of Mother Carmel is in some way messed with or destroyed, but how is Big Mom going to let that happen more than one time? She's not. But this changes the game a little bit. It isn't just about this portrait. If you plan on making Big Mom vulnerable to damage and possibly defeating her, you've got to in some way mess with her mind. It is either that, or there is some upper threshold to how much damage that she can withstand, and you just have to inflict more damage than, she has defense against. And while I do think that it is possible for this to occur at some point in time in the future of the story, I'm also equally certain that Oda will bring up again this point about, specific circumstances which makes Big Mom vulnerable. There's no reason to bring it up only for it to have zero relevance. It's either got to play a part in the story or be used as an explanation for something. Because as of this moment, it's kind of magical. A 5-year-old Big Mom with inhuman strength and this ability was able to destroy the strongest country, or one of the strongest countries in the entire world, Elbaf. Oda has to explain this. And so let's go back to what we were talking about earlier. Big Mom seems to take damage or be capable of taking damage when her emotional state changes. How is it even possible for this work? How can we even rationalize this by itself? And guys, I think that the only way is pretty much things that we've already been speculating, but we gotta speculate it in kind of a different way, that this has some relation to HAKI. Firstly, as of right now, this is a magical power. There is not that many magical sources of magical powers in One Piece. We have Devil Fruits and we have HAKI. Secondly, we also know that HAKI is affected by your state of mind. Your ability to use your HAKI to its optimal levels depends specifically upon your emotions. This has been confirmed within the story. An example of this is like when Luffy ended up revealing inadvertently Katakuri's secret to the cooks, and then Katakuri got a little hot-headed, to which Luffy was able to, for the first time in the fight, land a few blows. But again, guys, I don't think that this is a thing that is cause. I think that this is a thing that is correlated. Because the real question when you're talking about HAKI is, in the first place, how does it even work? I mean, like, what do we really know about HAKI? What is actually confirmed about the sources of the power? Somebody can see briefly into the future, but how does this work? Is this just pure magic, or is there some underlying explanation? Now, either way, it's not going to be realistic, right? Because we're talking about something that doesn't exist in the real world. But I do hope that Oda expounds upon HAKI more. Beyond just it's a power that is latent within everybody that some people end up gaining access to, right? But what is the source of this magical power? If there is any answer for this, I believe that the clue comes from Conqueror's HAKI. Conqueror's HAKI is not something that everyone is capable of possessing. It is only inherited by the very few, those with the disposition of a king. And what do the users of Conqueror's HAKI actually do to those around them? I mean, we saw it in the very recent chapters again. Conqueror's HAKI allows the user to exert their willpower over others in order to make them pass out. This absolutely confirms that in the world of One Piece, there is some magical ability granted to those who have incredibly strong willpower. If you guys didn't know, if you were to translate HAKI into English, it would essentially be willpower. The central idea behind willpower is essentially the power of one's own mind. Willpower is a power which comes from within. When you have a lot of stuff that you need to do in the day and you're sitting on the couch and you don't feel motivated to do anything at all, but you decide to do it anyway, that's willpower. Or if your friends' lives are on the line and you're fighting an incredibly strong opponent and your body has absolutely nothing left to give, you barely have the strength to stand, but you stand anyway, again, that is willpower. It's been clear since the very beginning of the story that Luffy has had this trait in abundance, and so when it's later revealed that there is a type of HAKI which emphasizes on knocking people out or suppressing others' willpower with your immense willpower itself, it makes sense. It makes sense for our main hero to have this power. And so guys, we've established HAKI, willpower, the same thing. But another word to describe the meaning behind willpower is spirit. And another word for spirit is soul. And this all comes back to the idea that one's own willpower derives from within. You define a human being by the things that you can see and the things that you cannot. And the things that you cannot see but which define a person all relates to their soul, their emotions or their character, their spirit of being. And so guys, the idea is pretty simple. The source of the power of HAKI itself, from Conqueror's HAKI to Observation HAKI to Armament HAKI, is a person's soul or spirit. Souls exist in One Piece. You have the Soul King Brook, who can remove his soul from his body and travel around outside. You have Big Mom specifically removing soul from people's body. It may not always be seen, but it is always there. Remember from before when we described the soul or spirit as the parts of a person that cannot be seen but help define who they are, like their emotions and their character. You look at somebody like Kobe, who awakened Observation HAKI during the Marineford War. Kobe, an extremely kind individual, very thoughtful, awakens the abilities of Observation HAKI, where he becomes very in tune with the emotions of everybody around him. Do you see the correlation here between the nature of his soul or his character and the powers of the HAKI that he unlocked? Even look at the monster trio of the Strats. Oda specifically explained to us in an SBS that Zoro specializes in armament haki, while Sanji specializes in observation haki. He is more in tune with observation haki, and we learn in this last arc from Revujo, and as his character is explained more, Sanji is kinder than anyone. Observation haki, again, being able to sense the emotions of people around you. Do you think that Oda chose this specialty for Sanji for no reason? And then going to Luffy, his specialty is Conqueror's haki. He has the disposition of a king. He has an indomitable spirit. He has an unbreakable, immense amount of willpower, and he can use this willpower to suppress the wills of those who are weak-willed around him. Again, his inner nature, the parts of his personality and character which define him but we cannot see, his soul, relates to his specialty in haki. But you have to keep in mind that a person is incredibly complex. Luffy is capable of using all the various kinds of haki, and that's because he's strong enough in all of those areas to be able to tap into that inner power, to awaken and use his soul. And so we're going to do some heavy speculation right now, and I want to give a huge thanks to Twin Kid B, who I know specifically messaged me about this topic some months in the past. But the idea is that all the powers of haki are extensions of one's own soul. So something like armament haki, literally they have the capability of using their soul as armor around their body. Or in the case of observation haki, using their soul as a sort of sixth sense, to feel out the souls of others. Or even as Usopp did in Dressrosa, to be able to perceive the souls of others, in order to be able to locate them beyond just your sense of sight. Or something like Conqueror's haki, to use your soul as a sort of blanket to crush the weaker souls around you. Or even Brook's power, which is not necessarily directly related to what I've been talking about, but he is known as the Soul King, and he's used an ability very similar to Conqueror's haki to the homies in Whole Cake Island. Brook uses music to influence the souls of other people, it's soul music. And I think that this connection further justifies what Conqueror's haki actually does, suppresses other people's spirits. Conqueror's haki acts on the soul. Haki itself is related to the soul. Brook uses an ability very similar to haki, using the power of music. And everybody should know the power of music. If you've ever listened to a song and wanted to cry or wanted to rage, you go to the gym, you put on some music to put you in the right mood. Music can affect your emotions, your character, the parts of you that cannot be seen, your soul. And going back to emotions, Katakuri, while enraged, could not properly use the abilities of observation haki. And continuing on with emotions, Big Mom, while grieving, Big Mom, while sad, became vulnerable to damage. But I guess here, we have to get to the huge question, the huge problem. Typically speaking, it seems that in order to use various elements of haki, first of all, we see these elements. When somebody uses armament haki, we can now see that in the story. And second off, it seems as though people actually have to concentrate. It's like you have to will your spirit to do what it is that you want to do. So if you want to create armament haki, you have to will your spirit to coat your body and then defend you. You aren't just automatically protected from all damage just by existing. Your spirit does not act on its own in order to protect you. Or talking about observation haki, you have to will your spirit to feel out the spirits of those around you. And if you aren't concentrating on what it is that you are doing, then it won't work. But yet, Big Mom has always had this ability. Big Mom shows no signs of using armament haki at all times. It seems as though innately Big Mom just cannot sustain any damage. But you know, we learned something in the recent chapters which is comparable to this. Perhaps the only thing in the story which is comparable to this, which is Luffy's innate ability for observation haki. Luffy has always innately had the ability to perceive the intentions or perceive the emotions of those around him, as explained in the very last chapter. Perhaps if we were to give this a name, we would call it innate haki, or maybe true haki or real haki. If other people have to concentrate in order to make their spirits do what they want, Luffy doesn't need to do this. He just has this capability because of his emotions and character itself, because of his soul. And I believe that the same might be true of Big Mom, but different. Rather than having an innate ability to sense the emotions and the intentions of other people, her spirit has the innate ability to protect her. And this power is only broken when her spirit itself is broken, such as in the moments where she's thinking about the past. And so guys, I think that this adds nicely with another detail which was revealed in the story, which is that Big Mom's soul itself is incredibly powerful. This is why Napoleon and Zeus and Prometheus are homies of a completely different level from all the other homies. They were made from Big Mom's own soul. In fact, I think that anybody who has the powers of Conqueror's HAKI has to have a very powerful spirit. It is possible to damage someone through their armament HAKI, but nobody can damage Big Mom because her soul is too powerful. So anyway, as we've seen in the recent chapter, Big Mom is starving, and I am certain that Oda has a role for this to play in the actual story. And I speculated in the last chapter, as well as in prior chapters, that potentially Oda is setting up Big Mom being capable of taking damage. But honestly, it was incredibly hard to put my thoughts out there without the proper justification for them. So now is, I think, the best time to do that. The reason why I think that Big Mom actually might be capable of being damaged as she starves before our eyes in the current events in the chapters is because food strengthens her soul. Soul food. Very similar to the concept of soul music. One thing that I thought was really interesting is Prometheus got stronger by eating fire. Prometheus is essentially a being created from fire and soul. So in a way, you could speculate that Prometheus' own soul was strengthened by eating. The same is even true of Zeus. When he ate Nami's black balls, he got stronger. And it's not as though he was starving beforehand. So if we speculate that Big Mom has a massive spirit, and it is this massive spirit and innate ability to defend herself which creates her invulnerability, then by starving, by weakening the spirit, due to a lack of soul food, Big Mom could be capable of damage, much the same as changing her emotional state. But anyway guys, it took a long time to really get to where I was going, but I hope that everything that I said makes sense. This is why I do believe that it's possible that Big Mom actually does sustain some damage here in the short term, or this is the purpose behind Big Mom starving in the story. And this may all lead to Oda explaining new things about HAKI, if what I'm saying here is true. But as always, I am curious as to what you guys think, whether you agree or disagree and why. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.